ముందుగా ప్రియమైన విద్యార్థులకు మరియు వారి తల్లిదండ్రులకు నమస్కారం. నా పేరు కె వెంకన్న జూనియర్ కాలేజ్ చైర్మన్. నేను ఈ రోజు 10th క్లాస్ విద్యార్థులను దృష్టిలో పెట్టుకొని మాట్లాడడం జరుగుతుంది. అది ఏమిటనగా, మనందరికీ తెలుసు, గత 2 సంవత్సరాలుగా కరోనా కారణంగా విద్యార్థులు ఎటువంటి పరీక్షలు రాయకుండానే పై తరగతులు పంపడం జరుగుతుంది. ఫలితంగా ఐఐటి జేఈ మరియు నీట్ లాంటి జాతీయ స్థాయి పరీక్షలను సాధించడం కష్టతరం అవుతుంది. దీనిని అధిగమించడానికి మరియు 10వ తరగతి పరీక్షలో అత్యధిక మార్కులు సాధించడానికి నేను మీ ముందుకు కె వెంకన్న జూనియర్ కాలేజ్ ప్లాట్ఫామ్ ద్వారా అనుభవజ్ఞులైన అధ్యాపకులచే ఉచిత వీడియో క్లాసులు, హ్యాండ్ రిటన్ నోట్స్ మరియు గత ప్రశ్నపత్రాల సమాధానాల విశ్లేషణ ఇవ్వబడును. కాబట్టి నేను విద్యార్థులకు చెప్పదలుచుకున్నది ఏంటంటే, ఈ ఉచిత వీడియో క్లాసులను మరియు హ్యాండ్ రిటన్ నోట్స్లను క్లాస్ రూమ్ లో కూర్చొని చదువుకున్నంత సీరియస్ చదువుకోవాలను. ఇంకొకటి ఏమిటనగా, ఈ యొక్క క్లాసులు విన్న వెంటనే అర్థం చేసుకొని ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయవలను. ప్రాక్టీస్ చేయడం అంటే కేవలం చదవడం కాదు, పేపర్ మీద రాయవలను. అలాగైతే గుర్తుండిపోతుంది. దీంతో పాటు మీ యొక్క నాలెడ్జ్ ని పరీక్షించుకున్న కొరకు త్వరలో ప్రీ ఫైనల్ పరీక్షలు కూడా నిర్వహించబడు. ఈ యొక్క అవకాశాన్ని సద్వినియోగం చేసుకోవాలని 10th చదివే విద్యార్థులకు విజ్ఞప్తి చేస్తున్నాను.
The last and the most important topic of this 3rd chapter of social studies, production and employment, is, with this we'll complete the lesson. Okay, and the topic is underemployment, disguised unemployment, or otherwise called as hidden employment. I repeat, underemployment, disguised unemployment, or even hidden employment. What is this underemployment or disguised unemployment or hidden employment? What is this? Because in my first session I explained you what is employment, right? But then what is this underemployment? What is this? Employment and underemployment, what is this? Sounds very tricky, right? I'll explain to you very simple. Before explaining what I will do is I'll give you an example so that you'll understand things very clearly. For example, you must have seen any small grocery shop, very small gully ka shop rehta hai na. So obviously, have you seen any small shop at your home where the mom, the dad, and even the couple of children sit doing the job? You go to get some chocolates and biscuits in the shop, and all these things happen, right? You go and see all these things, and you know who is mainly employed there? For seeing, everybody is employed, like the whole of the family members are a part of the employment of the shop. But if you look at it, only the dad, the male person, who is rigorously involved in the shop, is the only employment. The mother and the 2 children are already in the shop. They are called as hidden employment or underemployment or disguised unemployment. Getting it? So obviously, what do you mean by underemployment, hidden employment, and where people are visibly employed? To see, for you, you feel every one of them are employed in a family, but the end of the day, you'll find them, majority of them are actually unemployed, right? So if you have a farmer has an acre of land, he is cultivating and doing the job. His family member also directly involved in harvesting or watering or putting spraying the pesticides and all these things. But whole of the family visibly are employed. But the end of the day, the farmer or his wife the farmer is the only person who is employed, and whole of the family are unemployed. So when you find the situations, what do you understand? They are underemployed or disguised unemployment or hidden employment, right? Got it? So obviously you get it, 1 mark question. What is underemployment or disguised unemployment? Then what is it you'll have to write? You should say where people are visibly employed but are actually unemployed. As I said, you quoted the example, right? Whole of the family is involved in the activity. But at the end of the day, there is only one person is properly employed because he is generating the income and contributing to the GDP. He is the one person who falls in any sector of the economy. But whole of the family members are helping him out, but they are not a part of the employment. So obviously, they all fall under underemployment or disguised unemployment. Okay. And this is one most important sector. And as we discussed the organized sector and unorganized sector as well, I have one more key point to throw on this. When we discussed organized sector falls in the domain of the government, and government very well takes care of all its employees. But what about unorganized sector? Why is that the people in the unorganized sector, they feel so insecure? Because the situation is as such. And what is the thing, what is it we can do, in fact, for the betterment of unorganized sector? Because organized sector is already safe, secure because of the protocols and because of the formal procedures and all are there. But what about unorganized sector? For us, how can we make unorganized sector as well better in the country? Because majority of the people are in unorganized sector. The percentage of the people who are in the organized sector are not as many as in unorganized sector. So how can we give a safer environment? How can we get a security in unorganized sector? Or precisely, how can we do or work towards the betterment of the unorganized sector? Why? Why should we think about it? Because there are so much of the percentage of the people who are working in the unorganized sector. So we need to thrive for the betterment of the unorganized sector. So what are the ways we can follow, or what are the reforms we can get? What is a reform? A new change which comes across. A new change, whenever you comes across a change, is always called as a reform. And what are the reforms we can get across in the unorganized sector, students? Think about it. Tomorrow you all, some of the students might be the farmers, your fathers or your grandfathers, grandparents must be farmers, and your mom and dad must be helping. There are so many people, when you look around, so many people fall under unorganized sector. But how can we get the reforms in the unorganized sector to make sure that the people in the unorganized sector are also safe, secure, and we should thrive for excellence in every field where we come across. So let's work on the reforms of the unorganized sector. Now focus on this, the reforms for the betterment of the unorganized sector. What is this things? I'll tell you. See here, it must be clear. Reforms for the betterment of the unorganized sector. As I said prior, the wages in the organized sector, that is the government sector, they are fixed. There are fixed wages, but unlike in our unorganized sector, there are no fixed wages, and the amount of the wages is also very nominal, very nominal. So obviously we'll have to focus and enhance. There should be considerably increase in the wages, because every person under the sun globally, not only the country, everybody thrives for his livelihood. Right? And so obviously there should be a minimum wages act to be introduced even in the something like unorganized sector, and there should be a proper rise even in the increase in the wages of the unorganized sector. Because of the wages, he is not in a position to meet even his basic requirements, basic amenities of life. What is that wages are useful? Think about it, children. But the reason why I am asking you to think about it, being in class 10, is when you go out of your house, you go to play cricket in the garden, you go to play cricket in the parks and all, you go for a walk in the garden, you see around people who are working in the construction of the buildings, right? These all fall under unorganized sector. How are they living? What is their livelihood? If every one of us start thinking in this way, probably we can reinforce or we can contribute for the betterment of the society. So in this process, focus on the reforms for the betterment of the unorganized sector. The first point being the increase in the wages. Wages is nothing but the salary. It might be some of the places they give for every weekend, they take weekend or monthly, fortnight, whatever it is, but there should be a proper hike or proper increase in the wages. And the second thing is security in the jobs. Generally, these people who are working in this unorganized sector, they work on the whims of the employer, but that should not be there. So, but you get into the organized sector, the person has a security. Once he steps into a job, he is in the same job almost for a prolonged period till he gets retired. Isn't it so? Then can't we provide at least some way in that power? Can't we provide that atmosphere even in unorganized sector? We need to have that security in the job. A person who gets into the job and gives us the best into the job, he should be given a security. not on the whims of the employer, but he should be given a security in the job. This is the most important factor we need to consider as well in unorganized sector. And the third one is overtime work should be paid. As I discussed prior when we are talking about the organized and unorganized sector, in unorganized sector, when the overtime somebody works, the particular time is from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and poor person, they is still almost like 8 to 9 p.m. He is working 3 to 4 hours more, and but he is not paid for his services. Children, remember always one thing what I am saying. Anywhere, whatever the subject is, whatever the field is, effort should never go waste. Effort should always be rewarded. Appreciate the person, pat the person. So obviously, isn't it the minimum etiquette, minimum courtesy? So obviously, we'll have to do this. Overtime as well should be paid. And medical facilities, as you have medical facilities in the government sector, people they have ESI and all these things, they have some medical facilities which are being provided to the government sector, precisely organized sector. So in that case, when we come across the unorganized sector as well, we'll have to emphasize and take a point that even they should be getting some qualitative proper medical facilities, so that everybody remains hale and healthy. At the end of the day, they can give their proper output in the working atmosphere or working platform. Okay, and now the last but not the least is safety working places. You find so many factories and some mines and all, which is you don't find even a safer places. So what we'll have to do is, we'll have to make sure that there are proper working places, not only proper working places, hygienic conditions and even safer places, the precautions, all the precautions required for any person to work in any atmosphere should be mandatorily be taken. That should be compulsory, that should be taken with utmost importance.
Hello students, my name is R.K. Pandey. I have done my BTech from IIT Kanpur from electrical engineering. I teach chemistry in K. Venkana classes. I head the chemistry department. The main facility of K. Venkana classes is all the faculty are very rich in experience, and they have taught students who have secured single and double digits. They have got very good ranks in JEE and NEET. So if you are serious for your career and if you want to pursue your career in engineering or medical, you are surely welcome here. The facilities includes not only the top tier teachers, but the other facilities like doubt clearing sessions and other academic as well as personal treatment that is provided by this institute.
So, how many points we covered total? Almost there are 5 points wherein we can really work on the reforms for the betterment of the unorganized sector. The first one being the increase in the wages, and the second one being the security in the jobs, and the third one being the overtime work should be paid, because never ever see to it that always the effort should be rewarded always. And the third one is the proper medical facilities, and because a sound mind and a sound body, a person who is healthy only will be able to deliver at the end of the day. And the last point is safety, hygienic and proper working places, people who are working in unorganized sector. So if we focus on these reforms in the unorganized sector, I think we can get a proper improvement even in the unorganized sector. The people will be more satisfied, and we can take in par with the organized sector, provided these reforms are strictly followed, not leaving any one of them. And now the last topic is, you find intermediate goods. What is this intermediate? I know you all must have heard after 10th we all get into intermediate. No, not at all. Not that intermediate I am talking about. This is intermediate goods. What are these intermediate goods? Means the goods which you get in 11th and 12th. No, it's not, children. Intermediate goods are those goods which are used in producing final goods and services. The intermediate goods are those which are used in producing the final goods and services. I will tell you the example. Paddy and the rice. Paddy is the intermediate good, and what is the final good is rice. You cannot consume the paddy directly. We cannot eat paddy directly, so obviously it's an intermediate good. Once it comes into the form of a rice, it is called as the final good. Now you will be getting in 1 mark answer. Somebody might ask in the board exams, define intermediate goods And 1 mark answer, what should you write? Intermediate goods are those goods which are used in producing the final goods and the services. And what are the final goods? These are for the final consumption. As I said, paddy is an intermediate good and rice is the final good. And if you want to eat idli, the dosha, the most favorite cuisine of all my children, of my students, dosha is made out of the urad dal. So obviously urad, it's an intermediate good if we consider here. The final good is the idli. So obviously, when you take all these things, intermediate goods are nothing but they are in the process of becoming the final goods or even the services. So you call them as the intermediate goods. See, for example, as I said, example, what are the differences? There are only 2 differences between the intermediate goods as well as the final goods. And what are those, children? Intermediate goods, the first point is goods are meant for further production. Means what? It's still in the process of the production. The service has yet to be delivered. It is in the process. So those goods you call them as the intermediate goods, and those goods which are in the final stage for consumption, ready to consume, you call them as the final goods, right? And the last but not the least point is, and intermediate goods can never be included or be a part of our GDP. Only the final goods can be included in the part of our GDP, because these doesn't give us the final good, or this doesn't give us the final service, but these final goods only give us the goods as well as the final service. So only these can be included in our GDP. And now what are the topics we covered in whole of the lesson? Let's, like an index, let's get across. We discussed the definition of the production and employment, right? And after the production and employment, what did we discuss? What is production? Something we produce is called as production, and wherein we have to work to generate in the process of the production, that is called as employment. This is what we thought. And after this we discussed, because we are talking about production and employment, we have discussed even the 3 sectors of the economy: the primary sector, the secondary sector, and the service sector. And we differentiated what is primary sector. All the things which are in the domain of the nature, for example, agriculture, fisheries, poultry, all these things fall under primary sector. And now what is secondary sector? You should be getting by this time. What is secondary sector? The industries, for example, large industries, small scale industries, and cottage industries, all these things together put across, you get across here. Which sector? Right, secondary sector. And third sector is the service sector, where services of the people we get across. For example, hospitals, hotels, postal services, telegraph, etc. All these things fall under our service sector. So once we understood these 3 sectors, why did we understand these 3 sectors? What for? How do we get our GDP? When we are good at understanding these 3 sectors, primary sector, secondary sector, and the tertiary sector or service sector, we understand how to get our GDP. What is GDP? GDP is nothing but the final output, the monetary value of all the goods and the services put together of a financial year of a country is our GDP. So we know now how to calculate a GDP and all. What are the things to be considered, taken into consideration in calculating the GDP as well, we have discussed. Okay. And now after that we have discussed even about the organized sector as well as the unorganized sector. Organized sector, what do we have? Let me put it across till I just forgot to put it across. In GDP we quoted some examples as how do we come to the conclusion of GDP, the stage 1, the stage 2 and the stage 3. We have, remember the example, the paddy which I gave you. From the farmer to the rice miller and coming back to the hotler. The first stage was the farmer, very true, and the second stage was coming to the rice miller, and from rice miller coming back to the hotler. And the prices never get across only take the final output, final value, but don't consider every value so that the GDP gets on increasing and multiplied. That's not the way of calculating the GDP. So we discussed even the stage 1, stage 2 and as well as stage 3. Okay, now after that we have discussed even about the organized sector as well as the unorganized sector. Organized sector is nothing but, remember only one point automatically, I know you all are brilliant children, I know that you all are very well intelligent and brilliant and smart. Remember only this point, organized sector, unorganized sector. Organized sector is nothing but the sector which is in the domain of the government is organized, which is not in the domain of the government is unorganized sector. Got it? Very clear. And after that, what did we discuss? The last point was what is underemployment and what is disguised unemployment or even precisely hidden employment. Don't get confused. Somebody asks you what is hidden employment. What is this hidden employment? I did not read. No, don't think. We read it. Disguised unemployment, underemployment or hidden employment, all these things put together, only one definition. And what's that? Where people are visibly employed but are actually unemployed. I gave you an example also, right? A farmer will be working in the place and a farmer alone cannot do all the work for the acre of land he has. So obviously his wife works with him for watering or using fertilizers and putting pesticides, whatever it is, and even his 2 children are also involved in the harvesting and all. But who is the person who is really working? Only the farmer is the person who is really working. Agriculture means what? In the primary sector and contributing to the GDP. But the farmer's wife and his 2 children are not at all really employees. They are visibly employed, but they are, as I said, visibly employed, but are actually unemployed. So this concept is called as disguised unemployment. After that, what did we discuss? We discussed, are there any ways wherein we can work for the betterment, for the reforms of the betterment of unorganized sector? Yes, we do have, if we strictly follow. And what's that? Increase in the wages and security in the jobs. And the third one being the overtime work should be paid, because always remember, effort always should be rewarded. And the fourth one being the medical facilities, and the fifth one being the safety, working places and even hygienic. Remember that, even hygienic places as well. Okay. And now the last topic, what did we, intermediate goods and the final goods. What are intermediate goods? Intermediate goods are those goods which are used in producing the final goods and services. I gave you the example. What the best example of intermediate good and the final good is paddy is the example of the intermediate good, because we don't consume paddy, right? Do we? No. Intermediate good paddy is in the process of getting into the final stage, and it comes as the rice that is called as a final good. And what are the 2 differences between, you might get even as a 1 marker answer, 2 marker answers also, differences between the intermediate goods and the final goods. And what are the 2 differences, children? Intermediate goods are meant for further production, means still, as paddy has to undergo still a process of becoming the rice and the husk has to be removed. So still in the process of production, and these final goods are for final consumption. We consume rice immediately once we get the rice. So for the final consumption. And again, the most important topic, the most important point is intermediate goods cannot be considered in the gross domestic product, but final goods only will be considered in the gross domestic product. Isn't it very clear? If you have any doubts in these topics, go through the previous videos and get across, and you'll be having very crystal clear. Thank you so much.